Welcome to my first LGBTQ education episode of 2020. I'm sorry about the lack of episodes this LGBT History Month, but I've been really busy catching up on schoolwork and releasing my history podcast episodes. So, with the release of this episode, I would like to wish you a Happy New Year and a Happy LGBT History Month. In this episode, I'll be speaking about the meaning of LGBTQIA+, and how the community became known as such. The word homosexual was increasingly used from the beginning of the 20th century, but from the 1960s, gay was the word favoured by homosexual men, and indeed by the end of the 20th century, the word gay was most commonly used and had its use promoted by major LGBT groups to describe people who experience same-sex attraction, although it's often used to specifically refer to men. Gradually, as what was called the gay liberation movement gained traction, the phrase gay and lesbian was increasingly used to address the struggles faced by both men and women who experienced same-sex attraction. These struggles were similar, yet unique, as there were indeed different attitudes and policies around the world towards gay men and lesbian women, respectively. In the early 1980s, the community was still recognized as the gays and lesbians, and sometimes the gays, lesbians, bisexuals, and transgenders, or GLBT for short. The use of the four-letter acronym is much more common in present times, although some organizations, such as the LGBT Historical Society in San Francisco and Northern California, still use the abbreviation GLBT, which was later changed to LGBT. This is a result of the HIV/AIDS crisis of the 1980s and 90s. During the crisis, there was a shortage of blood for HIV/AIDS patients, which required transplants. Unfortunately, gay men were unable to donate to their partners and friends, either due to the fact that they themselves had been infected, or because of a general rule which prevented MSMs, meaning men who have sex with men, from donating blood. Beth Hutchinson acknowledges in a Journal of Lesbian Studies the fact that in several US cities, lesbians began to organize drives to replenish the blood supply. And despite being instrumental to the survival of so many gay men, there is little documentation of lesbian blood drives after the initial press coverage of their organization of blood drives. Due to their vital actions in the AIDS crisis, but also the importance of women in the fight for equality, the L was moved ahead of the G, and the group became known as LGBT, or at the time, lesbians and gays. Still, until the 1990s, people still used the word gay to refer to people across the sexuality and gender identity spectrums. It was during this period when bisexual and transgender movements became more prominent, and these gender and sexuality identities became recognized both outside and within the community itself. However, bisexual people still faced discrimination, even within the supposedly accepting gay community itself. Bisexuals were often seen as people in a transitionary phase between being straight and gay, or people using the bisexual label as an excuse for being promiscuous. Moreover, transgender people adopted the term, which better suited those who did not undergo medical transitions, as the previous term often used for these people was transsexual. Even the term transgender, like gay, has since become an umbrella term in itself, with not just those who have transitioned from one binary gender to another using it, but also those who identify as non-binary, intersex, gender fluid, and more, embracing the term transgender. The letter Q is also often added to the acronym for the community. Meaning queer, it is an example of something of previously negative nature that the community has taken as their own. While in the past it was often used as a derogatory slur, it can now be used to refer to someone who does not align with the general societal norms of gender and sexuality. Furthermore, it is an example of an umbrella term, with the LGBTQ community being referred to as the queer community on occasion, although for some, whether it be due to their background, age, personal experiences, etc., it can bring back harsh memories due to the historically negative connotations of the term queer. Now we've come to LGBTQ+, probably currently the most commonly used name to refer to the community. Like I've just mentioned, LGBTQ+. Here the plus is used to signify that there are other gender identities. In fact, one extended acronym is LGBTQIP2SAA. This represents lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, queer, questioning, intersex, pansexual, two-spirited, asexual, and ally. Although it is important to be inclusive and recognize the unique identities of all people in order to keep it simple for everyone to understand, it is rather uncommon for these long acronyms to be used, and when they are used, it often results in a long-winded educational session, especially for people who are cisgendered or heterosexual, in order to educate them on the meaning of this long acronym. Thank you for listening to this episode of my podcast, LGBTQ Education from One Student to Another. Sorry if it is a bit short, but please do subscribe so you'll be notified of when the next episode is released. In the next episode, I'll be attempting to answer the question, what is homophobia?